Alright, it's Easter Sunday, and a couple of you have requested, when I talked about this smoked ham. So I'm doing this. I'm doing this particularly for you, Lonnie, down in New Orleans, Louisiana. He just got a smoker and he wants to know how to get this done. So this is a bone-in ham. This is Cook's brand. I guess my wife got this for free at ShopRite. You buy so much, they give you a free ham or whatever. But now this is cured, all right? It's not smoked. It's cured. They cure it with sodium nitrite and some salt. That gives it its curing and its flavor. This comes from the shank end of the leg of a pig. And so what we're going to do with this is we want to add to it a homemade rub here. Now this is 2 parts brown sugar, and then we have equal parts of chili powder, garlic powder, smoked paprika. If you can get it, it's much better than the regular paprika you might find. And we're going to put this on as a rub. And then this is going to go into my Big Green Egg smoker with some apple chips that I got soaking here. We use fruit woods for pork, apple, peach, pear, what have you. Nut woods for poultry, and hardwoods for beef. That's generally how I do it. But anyway, we're going to get going here, and I'm going to show you how to get this thing done. So the first thing to do is obviously take the celluloid off. Now you don't have to do this, but one of the things I generally like to do is I like to trim mine up a little bit. I don't like all of this. This is a fat that's right under the skin, and I like to just kind of clean it up a bit so you don't have that much on it. A lot of it renders out when it's cooking, but I still like to get most of it off, and I'll show you why in just a second. And if you noticed in the ingredients for my dry rub, one ingredient that's missing, and that's salt. Reason being, you don't need to add any salt to these bad boys because they're cured with a salt compound, and that makes it salty enough. What we want to do is take that salty flavor and kind of complement it with some spice and some smoke. My cutting board's kind of skidding around on me here. So I just basically take off some big visible portions of the fat that's on here. Like I said, some people don't do this. I like to do it this way. Another thing I do is I score the ham, just like this, going in about 3/8 of an inch with a sharp knife. Score it that way, and I'll score it this way. And the reason why we do that is because while this is cooking, these kind of open up a little bit, and they allow the glaze that we're going to glaze this with to penetrate inside. I also score the face of it. Some people get fancy and put diamond pattern in here. I don't think you have to get that fancy. You just want to be able to get these things to open up, get the meat to open up a little bit, get the rest of any fat that offends you off. All right. A little scoring over here. And that's about it. and we're ready for the next step. The next step in this process here is to use a good spicy type of mustard. We don't have any Dijon, so we'll go with the. But you want to get this all coated, and I even do this with brisket. It adds a layer of flavor, barely perceptible, but there. And it's an old barbecue secret, I guess. And you know, don't forget the face of the meat when you're seasoning it. We're going to eat this part too, right? All right. Get the glove off. Wash up a little bit. Okay. Liberally, and I mean liberally, add your dry rub. Another thing the mustard does is it helps this rub really adhere to your ham. And like I said again, this is brown sugar, chili powder, garlic powder, smoked paprika, a little bit of cayenne pepper, some black pepper. And man, this adds a layer of flavor to this ham that you would not believe. Now to complement this, we have a glaze we're going to be making with some fruit juices, some pineapple, some orange, a little apple sauce, and reduce that down. And as this thing cooks on my smoker at about 300, I'd say for about 3 hours. You want a nice, thorough, I mean it's already cooked, I guess, it's cured. I guess you could eat this raw if you wanted to. It's not raw, it's cured. But I wouldn't. Not when you could do something like this. So make sure that you add plenty of your rub here, and I put some on the bottom of the cutting board here. And that'll just sit there. And it's messy, but that's why we have a sink. Now the applewood chips, there's just about 2 handfuls in here. You don't want to overdo it with the smoke. They've been sitting in room temperature water for a couple hours now. The reason why you want to hydrate them and get them wet, get them to absorb the water, is because you just don't want them to burn up. You want them to smolder and create the smoke that you're looking for. So let's get out to the egg and get that started, and we'll continue. Alright, what we're going to be using, this is the Big Green Egg. This is a Komodo style cooker. It's basically a very thick ceramic, and these things control heat better than your oven in your kitchen. You control them by use of the dampers, both top and bottom here. And when you dial it in and get your temperature, they'll hold that temperature for hours and hours and hours. I've done 14-hour briskets on this thing where I'm running it at 250, and it just keeps its temperature. So we're going to get this thing started. If you use a Komodo type of cooker, you have to use natural lump charcoal. Briquettes, they have their place for Weber's kettle grills and things like that, but for this style of cooker, you really want to use the natural lump charcoal. Now, you could do this in any kind of smoker. If you have an electric smoker or some other kind. This is what I have, and this thing works great. Kind of easy to get lit. You get 3 or 4 spots of fire going here, and you just leave it alone. Once the fire gets going, you adjust your dampers to get the temperature you want, and that's pretty much it. Okay, our next step here is we want to make a glaze for this. And the glaze is a mixture of fruit juices, and some sugar. And what this does, this gets a sweet kind of glaze. And now we have the balance of the saltiness of the ham, the natural saltiness of the ham, the smoky flavor, and the spice that we've put in on the rub and the cooking process, and this is going to be the glaze for it. So we'll start off with some pineapple juice. You see how carefully I measure everything. Well, we want this to cook down, so it's a considerable amount of liquid, but we bring it to a boil, and then we let it simmer, and the sugars naturally it reduces by about half. Do some orange juice, about that much, and I like to add applesauce to it. Yeah, man. Stir. Let this heat up a bit. When it heats up, we'll add a little bit of brown sugar, and then we'll get this to boiling. Alright, that's heating up pretty good. Get the sugar dissolved in it. And in here I add about a handful or so of brown sugar. Alright. Now whisk around. Now some people get a little creative here and even add in a couple of tablespoons of their rub. And that kind of adds a nice touch to it too. We just leave it like this. Again, we'll bring this up to a boil, and when it boils, we turn the heat down and we let it simmer, stirring occasionally, and it reduces and thickens up. So this will reduce in half. This is a 2-quart stock pot. We'll have about a quart of glaze. Now this is a very important part. This thing is going to be on that smoker for 2.5 to 3 hours, okay? You don't want it to get all dried out. So it's very important to put a pan of liquid underneath it. I put this on the ceramic shelf. The grate goes over that and the ham goes on top of that. And this will help keep the meat moist and keep it from drying out, and it imparts some flavor too. So we're going to start off with some apple juice. This was in the freezer, so get that thinned out. Also, very important here, about a half a bottle of beer. St. Paul you go. You want to use a hoppy kind of beer. I don't do the IPAs, are too hoppy. That's just about the good mixture of hops. Throw in a little water. I fill this tray about halfway up. And I throw in some bay leaf. Like so. And a little dehydrated onion flakes, I guess. This makes this steams as it and as it evaporates, the steam permeates the meat, because as you saw, that cooker is just a complete closed system and it all goes around it. It does impart a decent amount of flavor, even if you just use water. But you need something under there, because you dry your stuff out. I use this for everything I do a low and slow cook for, be it brisket, pulled pork, whatever. You want the moisture. Alright, you could see I'm right around 350 degrees. Now that temperature will go down some when we load this up, but then we'll bring it back up and adjust our dampers and it'll hold there. Alright, before we add anything, we're going to take our soaked apple chips and distribute them in the fire. And this is why you want them soaked, so they just don't hit that coals and start burning up. Put our plate setter on, ceramic base. Put our braising liquid there. And our grate. In our hog, right over it like that. Okay, close the dome. Now I know from experience, to keep this bad boy at 350, it was about like this, and the bottom pretty much where it is. Now you see this smoke permeates the outer surface of the meat. You don't want to just keep smoking and smoking and smoking and smoking. It's not good. It's too overwhelming. So you let this original smoke do its thing, and that imparts a smoky part of your smoked barbecue, whatever you're doing, and then let the heat do its thing. So we're adjusted to about 350. It's coming back up. It went down to 200 while it was opened and we put all the stuff on it. It'll be back up to about 300 pretty soon. I'm going to keep it around 300. In about an hour, we'll start basting this guy every 20 minutes or so. You can see the smoke doing its thing. There's my whirligig there. I made that. I got a Vigeo on it. Anyway, until such time. Good lordy. Well, it's starting to get sunny out here now. It's 1 hour into our cook here of our ham. And it is a shame that we don't have smell-o-vision, folks, because I'll tell you what, even before adding this glaze sauce here, this stuff is smelling good. So, as you can see, if you can't see it, this has thickened up and reduced down, like I said, by about 50%. Went from 2 quarts down to less than 1 quart. And it is nice and concentrated in flavor now. And our first one especially we'll be very liberal with. There's some apple chunks on there. And this baby is holding at about 300. So now, this is an every 20 minutes or so, come out here and keep basting this bad boy. And then we'll have a little bit of this glaze left over for serving, right? So that's that. That's that until we're done it. And I wish you could smell it because it is making me hungry. All right then. See you later. All right, folks. It's been just about 2.5 hours, 2 hours and 45 minutes. Anyway, in another 10 minutes or so, this guy is ready to come off. Put it under foil for about 15 minutes, let it settle down, and then we'll eat. We have some mac and cheese, homemade by my wife, and some asparagus. There you go. So this is how you do it. Happy Easter.